Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast. And believe it or not, we're just 7 weeks away from the Houston Cougars' first game in the Big 12. Joining me as special guest, Bobby Malvaez, newest member of our favorite Cougs podcast, the Holman Pawdcast. Great to talk to you, Bobby. And can you believe we're almost to Power 5 football back in Houston?
I would have never believed it when I first started cheering for U of H. What was it, 17 years ago now or 16 years ago? Would have never been happening, but here we are 7 weeks away.
Yeah, and before we preview the Cougs a little bit, give everyone a taste of your background, how your love of the Cougs started.
I started as a student. So actually my freshman year of high school, we had like an elective course where you looked up different colleges and stuff like that. And I looked it up and I saw University of Houston, and I saw they went to a regional in baseball, that kind of stuff. And I was like, I always kind of wanted to go there. And then we moved my junior year of high school and ended up at U of H. And so that's kind of where everything started. 2007 was my first football season cheering for U of H. And at my orientation, they said that applications jumped up like 300% after we won the conference title in 2006. And so I knew I couldn't do anything that crazy to influence my university, but I knew that if I could go make a home field advantage for the team and it led to conference titles, it would lead us to better applicants, better things like that for our university. And so I joined an organization called Coog. Eventually became president of that. We worked hand in hand with the athletic department. So eventually became president of that. That's where I met Sam and Dustin and all my wonderful Cougar fans. And I sat front row for pretty much every sport while I was there from 2007 to 2012. Sitting front row, kind of losing my mind, losing my voice. I was the guy who would yell at the opponents and heckle them a little bit. So they put me front row, all of that. And since then, it's just kind of been keep watching. And I've gone to big games. I've watched us lose. I've watched us win big games. So it's not easy being a Cougar fan, but it is fun. That is for sure.
Yeah. And Bobby, I can't believe it because, for the first 21, 22 years, I forget when they actually moved over, what year they moved over. But for my entire youth, the Cougars were in the Southwest Conference. They mattered. They mattered nationally. And all of a sudden, they didn't matter like everybody else. I just thought, well, we'll never see the day when they matter. And I'm just so glad that the city of Houston finally gets to see a team in this city that matters in the national conversation again and in a Power 5 school.
Yeah, the city deserves it. The university deserves it. Us fans deserve it. Now, I just want the city to come out and support their hometown city. So really hoping that that's what happens this year.
Yeah, and I've told Dustin and Sam before. I've told those guys, I'm like, yeah, when I was a kid, everybody was rooting for the Cougars because they mattered nationally, because they were the ones that had the city of Houston on their uniforms. And so hopefully you're right and that happens again and people get excited about this team. Well, let me just ask you to start with, Coach Holgorsen hasn't exactly committed to Donovan Smith as his starting quarterback, but Bobby, does Arkansas transfer Lucas Coley really have a shot?
I don't think so. I think, he kind of let it slip up at media days when he said, I was at media days, but I didn't hear this part because he was talking to ESPN when he pretty much said he would be surprised if Donovan Smith wasn't the starter heading into the fall. So he kind of let it slip, and you could hear him try to walk it back a little bit in the press conferences after and that kind of stuff. But, he kind of let that out and it started to get around. And so I think Lucas Coley has a shot, but I don't think it's much of one, right? It's like a Dumb and Dumber when he's like, so you're saying there's a chance? It's like, yeah, I guess anything could happen. But I think at this point, it's pretty much Donovan Smith's job to lose.
Now, I just found it real interesting that with the Longhorns now on the schedule this year for the first time in forever, did you notice that VY was out at UH practice whispering in the quarterback's ears? I just thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, it's, he's a Houston guy. Hopefully he's one of the fans that we see show up to support the city more than anything. So anytime you can learn literally anything from Vince Young, I think that's a pretty good person to learn from when it comes to football knowledge.
What position group are you most excited about of their groups going into this season?
I would say the one I'm most excited about is going to be defensive line. There was a little bit of fall back last year. The year before 2021, we had a really good defensive line. And then 2022, we expected it to blossom even more. But then we lost Derek Parrish and he went down to some injuries. It seemed like we never really bounced back from that. We still had some talent on the defensive line. And I hate to say this, but they underperformed a little bit last year. And we lost some of the high end on the defensive line. But I think we got some transfers coming in, and the talent that we're keeping is going to be top-notch talent that's going to be ready to take on the Big 12 this year. So I would say it's probably both lines, whether it's offensive or defensive line. Offensive line's keeping a lot of talent this year as well.
All right, let's go the other direction. What position group are you concerned about? Which group might not be ready for Big 12 football?
Man, I got to go with defensive backs. That secondary wasn't good last year. They lose some of the talent that they had in that secondary. And so it's a big question mark going into this season. It was a big question mark going into last season. But this season, it's a pretty big question mark. We got a couple of transfers that are coming in that may do all right, but you just don't know. And I got to be honest, it's the same with the quarterback position, right? We've seen Donovan Smith play. He looked good for Texas Tech last year against us for sure. And he played some really good games last year, but you don't know how he's going to work. You have a lot of unknowns at the quarterback slot as well.
Is there a player or two that you see having a breakout season?
Yeah, so I would say my biggest one is going to be the running back Snead. I think he got 2 starts last year, and in those 2 starts in a couple of his games, he got 100-plus rushing yards in that game. I think with Alton McCaskill leaving the program, I think he's going to get a lot more touches, and that's going to lead to more yards for him. I really expect him to have a big year. And we got another transfer at running back, so he's going to still be splitting some carries, but I really think that he's going to do really well for this team.
One of the things when you move into the bigger conferences, your offensive line has got to be maybe a little bit bigger. It's got to consistently hold up. Do you think this offensive line is ready to hold up for Snead and really Donovan as well?
Yeah, Honestly, I really do think it is. It's a very veteran line that we're going to have. And really, if you pay attention to who we brought to at media days, it's clear that Coach Holgorsen thinks that this is going to be a strength of this team, right? We had, I think it was 3 offensive linemen there of the players that came. Maybe it was 2. But a lot of our leadership is going to come from the offensive line this year. We got a new offensive line coach as well, which I think is another step towards us going to the Big 12 and kind of thinking a little different. One of the big things at media day that I noticed was when you talk to the offensive linemen, the big thing they talked about was new run schemes and new run blocking and how they're really putting the focus on their run blocking going into this season. So like you said, going up in tougher competition, what's that going to look like? For sure. It could be they get a little overwhelmed or things like that. But for the last 2 years, we've been recruiting Big 12 size guys. And I really think Holgorsen has done a good job of bringing in talent that's going to match the size and the speed that you need at a Big 12 level.
Who do you see as Donovan's guy this year? I mean, Tank Dell's gone, obviously. Mm-hmm. Who's the guy that he's going to have to lean on?
I mean, it's going to be Matthew Golden. Matthew Golden was number 2, a clear number 2 behind Tank Dell last year. He's young, and he just manages to find open holes on the field. I think you're going to see Matthew Golden have a big year this year if Donovan Smith has a big year. If Donovan Smith is going to have a big year, Matthew Golden's going to have a big year as well. And then also Manjack. I'm a huge Manjack fan. He's just one of those pesky wide receivers that on a 3rd and 4 always seems to get the ball open at the 5-yard mark, right? He just always seems to be the guy who's open at the right time, at the right position on the field. So watch him just kind of make this offense work a little bit.
Yeah, one of the better names too. You went from a tank to a Manjack, basically.
Yeah.
Last I checked, the Cougs over/under win total in Vegas was 5. How many wins is realistic for the Cougs? And maybe more importantly, how many wins does Holgorsen need to hold on to the fan base and the administration this season?
Well, I think fan base and administration are 2 different questions, right? I think Holgorsen, for the fan base, the fans are going to be wanting 7 wins this year. And I really don't see that happening. I see us, I kind of went through the schedule and and I was a little generous to us, and I had us at 5. And so I think Vegas at 5 is probably right about on. I would probably stay away from the 5. if I was going anywhere, I'd go under, because maybe you don't win one at Texas Tech. Maybe you lose a game you're supposed to win. Come down to that UTSA game, right? If you think we're going to win Texas Tech, you got to win UTSA too. And so I really have a set of 5 wins, and I would lean towards 4. But I think the AD said it. Pesman said it at media days, right? He said, what would be considered a successful season? And he said a bowl game. Well, that's 6 wins. So administration is hoping for 6, but I think they're kind of expecting 5 as well. And I think the fans are expecting 8. Just as you see, and you kind of see around things, people really get excited. And I think people are getting excited for a U of H team being in the Big 12 without realizing what it's going to take to be a U of H in the Big 12. And so I think a lot of times we'll get our expectations really high, but I don't think Holgorsen is let go if he goes 5-7, 6-6.
Yeah, you mentioned 7 or 8. I saw a quote from Pesman where he said if Holgorsen wins 7 or 8, he's coach of the year. And 10 teams, Bobby, 10 teams on this schedule made bowl games last year.
Yep.
Yeah, it's an impressive schedule that they're going to have to face. You were just at Big 12 Media Days. Did you learn anything interesting, either on the record or maybe even off the record?
Really, at Media Days, it's just a lot of them giving you coach speak. The biggest thing that I found was the most interesting was the difference in spending. So Pesman said that if you take away the Longhorns with their super big athletic budget, if you take them out because they're an outlier, the average budget of a Big 12 conference school is $115 million, and U of H spends $98 currently. That's a big gap, especially in college sports where money makes all the difference, right? The rich schools tend to do really well, right? Bama, Michigan, Ohio State, Texas. Though A&M doesn't do well, right? As much as that gives me joy, right? But they spend a lot of money. They have top-notch facilities. They get some of the best players. Why they can't fix it, I don't know. But money helps. And if you're $17 million behind, that's a pretty big amount to be behind. And we're not going to get our full Big 12 media share, for another 3 years. So the biggest thing they were talking about is patience and time for almost all of our athletic programs, right? You're not going to go from being the lowest spending school, one of the lowest spending schools. You know, we've been behind for 30 years behind a lot of these schools that joined the Big 12. They've been getting millions of dollars, right? They're raking in $40 million a year, and we're coming in with 15. We've been behind for a very long time. A very, very, very long time. And it's just going to take some time for us to catch up. And that seemed to be the theme that I caught from the athletic department, from Holgorsen, from the players coming in, is just like, we need a little bit of an adjustment period. For us to come in and you expect us to just go ahead and compete in the Big 12 immediately is going to kind of be unrealistic. So the big thing that, like you said earlier, the idea of what's it going to take for the fans and the administration, I think the fans are going to have a come to Jesus meeting with expectations pretty quickly, as much as I don't want that, right? There isn't somebody cheering harder for the Cougs to go 12-0 in this football season and go to the college football playoff. You're not going to find someone who wants that. But I think expectations are going to have to be set that it's going to take 3 years for us to get our full share. If you want the university to spend, we need buy-in from the alumni. We need buy-in not just from our administration.
Yeah, I don't know how much it surprised them, but I read that within about 5 minutes, they had sold, putting them on sale, they had sold $10 each. And I think they were somebody surprised at that. What did you think about the season ticket sales this year? I think they're up maybe 6,000 was the last I read.
Yeah, like 6,000 or 7,000. It's a huge boom for us. And that's really what we needed as a university, is for those alumni. I mean, it's the largest base for our alumni is Houston. We want them there every Saturday. And so seeing that extra 7,000, we've always said that we'll pack the place if we play schools that we like, right? There's 2 things Houston needs in not just U of H, but it's pretty much any team in Houston. You got to play interesting teams, right? Because Houston is such a melting pot of people from New York and people from LA and people from all over the world, basically. You got to play interesting teams. And then the second thing is you got to win, right? Think about Texans attendance last year. It wasn't good. Team wasn't going to win. Astros attendance, when the Astros were bad, I worked for the Astros at the time when the Astros were bad. You could get in with a Powerade bottle and $1. The Rockets haven't been great, and their season ticket sales have been down. So we're doing our part of saying when we said, hey, if you bring us good opponents, we'll pack the house, right? Just like we did for Oklahoma in 2016, I believe that was, right? We'll pack it if you give us the right schools. But the university needs to do their job and win some games for us. So the 7,000 tickets is just huge. It shows the support that the city will actually have for the team this year.
Yeah, your age range is probably the alumni that you want to see start coming to the games more often.
Yep.
What are you hearing from the people that you know? Are more people? Does it sound like they're going to come out to the games this year?
To be honest with you, most of my friends, since I was in the big athletic supporting group, were already season ticket holders, right?
Okay.
My group is Sam, Dustin, and all the friends that hung out with us in college. We're all pretty much going to go to games. I live in Dallas right now, so I don't even live in Houston, and I haven't had season tickets for the last couple of years just because my job, all that kind of stuff won't allow me. I decided to buy a season ticket this year. Why? So I can make it down to at least a couple of games. What's more exciting, going to TCU in our Big 12 opener at Texas, or the 2 games I made last year were like Temple and East Carolina or whoever it was. We played East Carolina on the road, but it was like Temple and then another game. Like, that's not as exciting as TCU and Texas. And even if I couldn't make Texas or TCU, another game I can go to is another Big 12 team that's going to get me super excited to go watch them, right? My parents live in Waco. I get to go to Baylor and watch my team play. I've never got to do that. So it's super exciting. But yeah, most people my age that I know have been season ticket holders and are really excited for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of the things that new Big 12 Commissioner Yormark said, which I thought was a little interesting, he said, the conference is the deepest football conference in the country. Do you buy that? Does the SEC fans buy that?
Right. SEC fans aren't going to buy much of anything. I think what he meant by that, I don't think the top of our conference is as good as the top of the Big Ten or the SEC. Right?
Sure.
I mean, last year TCU goes to the national title game, right? Which is great, but I don't think our 1 and 2 are beating Alabama and whoever else is coming out of the SEC or the Big Ten. But I do think what he means by that is the team that could be ranked at the bottom of the Big 12 could win the Big 12 this year. There's no easy game on our schedule, right? We actually may be the easy team in the Big 12 this year. Us, UCF, Cincy, right? And West Virginia, right? The bottom 4 of that, I would put that bottom 4 at the bottom of the SEC, and I think we could compete with teams like Vanderbilt, right? I really think U of H could, in the bottom of the Big 12, could compete with Rutgers, Vanderbilt. When people talk about the SEC, they always talk about how great the SEC is. The top half of the SEC is untouchable, but the bottom half of the SEC, let's be honest, isn't very good.
Yeah, my Missouri Tigers are sitting right there amongst those things you're talking about. You had any chance to watch some Nate Hinton in the summer league? It's been kind of fun watching him with the Rockets.
Yeah, he's been really good for the Rockets. And full disclosure, I'm a Mavericks fan, grew up in Dallas, but it is fun to watch Cougars just out in the association in general.
Yeah, I wish I could put his motor in some of the other Rockets players' body because, it's whenever you watch the Kelvin Sampson guys, they're just moving at a different speed.
Yep, and they have a fire under them that just they go 100% of the time.
Yeah, it's just something that you wish you would see sometimes more in the NBA. I know that it's tough for these guys to do when you're doing 82 game schedules, but when you're a role player like a lot of these guys are, you should be able to do that. What's the latest on the Scott Holman podcast?
Yeah, so we just uploaded all the Media Day audio to our premium Patreon. So that was really exciting to do that. And right now we're doing the Oscar Awards. So we award Male Athlete of the Year, Female Athlete of the Year, Play of the Year, Game of the Year, Coach of the Year, that kind of stuff. If you find us on Twitter at SH Podcast, PAWCAST, you can find us on there. And you can see all the Play of the Year nominees, plus a link to actually go vote for the Oscar Award. So if you're a U of H fan, if you're not a U of H fan, for whatever reason you want to go vote on Play of the Year, Player of the Year, we have that going on right now.
Yeah, I want to remind everybody that's up on YouTube, let us know what you think the Cougar is going to do. Put it down in the comments. You can find Bobby. It's at #1 Coog. Of course, on Twitter, that's at Twitter. And then on as far as the podcast, it's at SH Podcast. And spell that out for them, Bobby, in case they've forgotten.
PAWDCAST. So Paul like a Cougar paw.
And for everybody out there that's a Rockets fan, we're going to have a special Rockets podcast in a couple of days. Salman Ali is going to join us. So look forward to that. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on with the Rockets from the summer league and then going into the season. But man, I can't tell you, Bobby, how excited I am for Cougar football this year to watch a real team every week. Like, this is when you win a game now, you feel like, hey, we didn't lose this game.
Yep.
When you lose a game and when you win a game, it feels like it's a big deal almost every time.
Every single week.
All right. Can't wait for it. Can't wait to talk to you guys again. We'll see, I'm sure, as the season goes along. But thanks so much for doing this.
Absolutely. No problem. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.